Hi all, and welcome to this webinar on driving change through partnership, the importance of building a collaborative InsurTech ecosystem. My name is Michellod, and I'm a senior analyst at Celent, and maybe you already know, but Celent covers the InsurTech domain pretty extensively. Today, I have the chance to be joined by Ruth Foxe, FinTech investor at Allianz Ventures, Juan Cartagena, who is the founder and CEO of Traity, and Anastasia Stoycheva, business development manager at One. This webinar is brought to you by InsurTech Rising, Europe's biggest InsurTech showcase event, with over 50 InsurTechs demoing solutions to key industry challenges across the 15th and the 16th of November in London. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, you can send them to us using the blue Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. We'll be holding a live Q&A at the end of this session. But first of all, I'd like to provide you some views from Celent on the InsurTech ecosystem. Here you see that we've split the ecosystem in 6 different types of model. The first one being insurance companies, accelerator, and incubator. So it's where an insurance company owns version of an accelerator or incubator. Insurer venture arm. This is a venture arm of insurer that takes equity stake in later stages funding of startups, of course, and this is a very important model for insurance companies right now. Accelerator, a program of select startups that are provided support through small amounts of capital, mentoring, and training for a short period in exchange of equity. Venture capitalists also are very important. They are investors, especially at the early stage, and it's very important to have early stage investment in those different initiatives. And then partnerships and innovation capabilities, especially dedicated to innovation hubs that work with corporates to help them get better at innovation. And so this is a pretty obvious picture in terms of the different models we can find, but it can be sometimes difficult for insurance companies to navigate that. So when it comes to partnering with InsurTech firms, we've identified that there are some specific focus that need to be done in terms of dedicated insurance accelerators, and especially with 2 main dimensions in terms of business models, proposition, innovation, but of course, how to use specific technology in order to promote these new business models. If we look at the activity outside of the accelerators, we've seen a huge growth over the past 2 years. From 2014, $0.8 billion US, from 2.6 billion in 2015. So it's a lot of activities around that. Now, of course, we should not forget that the idea of InsurTech is also to identify emerging business models and how they could be enabled within the insurance value chain and business model. So at Celent, we've designed a kind of simple model where we have identified different areas or different targets, or I would say goals that are very important for insurance companies. And here you can find those 6 different targets: risk and compliance, efficiency and expenses, liability management, ecosystem and partnership, etc. And the idea is to understand how specific technologies can help create a disruptive model over those different categories. And I think it's very important for insurance companies, before identifying the optimal InsurTech or innovation ecosystem, to understand also how technology can help and where it can help, in which domain of their business. And if I look at the last slide I wanted to mention, and this is about the models for engaging with startups. And as I've mentioned before, startups are very important. We've seen in the recent past that insurance companies can work in different ways with startups. For instance, they are in many cases clients, but they are also partners in order to disrupt, or I would say make some elements of the insurance value chain a bit different using some technology play. So they can play a role as a distributor and they can play a role as an underwriter. And so they will partner with a startup company to provide the technology aspect. What we've also seen is Insurer as a collaborator in order to try to collaborate with startups going forward. So this is more or less how we would define the IntroTech ecosystem at Celent. And now I will pass over to Ruth from Allianz Ventures, and she will explain us in more details what she's been doing at Allianz in this context.
Hi, yes, thank you very much. This is Ruth Foxe-Blader. As it says on the slide, I am the lead FinTech investor at Allianz Ventures. Thank you very much for the introduction. I think that the introduction is very accurate in terms of what we are doing at Allianz, not only in the Ventures team, which I'll talk about, but in a number of other innovation teams which are aimed at looking at innovation broadly and digital innovation specifically. Like the slide that was shown previously at Allianz, in addition to the Ventures team, we have a number of other digital innovation teams from our Allianz X, which is our internal company builder and incubator, a partnerships team, which works on partnerships with larger companies in the digital space, as well as our Global Digital Factory, which is working on digitalizing our existing business, and my team, Allianz Ventures, which does do corporate venture capital investing and also provides a gateway to external innovation from the Allianz perspective, so a way to meet and socialize and work with startups. And for startups, we provide a conduit into the Allianz world, which can be very big and very complicated if you're not familiar with it. So at Allianz Ventures, we've sort of divided the world into a number of different categories, and I specifically tend to work on InsurTech and wealth management, which of course is not very specific when you're looking at companies that might be interested in Allianz. So I really do get to meet and work with many different companies in many different categories. We also have specialists in the cyber tech area, because this is a focus that we think is critical. As well, we look at digital health as an InsurTech specialization, connected property, and mobility as topic areas. So we've been around for about a year and a half, and we've made a number of investments to date. Some of them are with companies with whom we're actively partnering in order to co-create products or simply provide skill sets or products to the companies or to innovate the way that we're doing business. Some of our investments are more, I would say, long-term plays, spaces where we're very interested in seeing how technology and insurance develop or have a coordinated development in certain topics. So we've invested in a company, a cybersecurity anti-car hacking company in Israel. And this is simply because we think that this is very interesting and critical. We've invested in a European digital wealth management company with whom we're partnering in order to hopefully expand a little bit our value proposition and their value proposition and create potentially mechanisms for distributing managed funds in a digital way. So these are a few examples of some of the things that we've done so far. I think that from my perspective, as someone who's worked in technology for a long time and insurance for a while too, I like to stress that I do truly believe that innovation in our industry is going to be encouraged and catalyzed by innovation that happens outside of the walls of our companies, and having a structured approach to integrating that innovation to finding where in insurance startups value chain an incumbent can play an active role will be beneficial to innovation generally in insurance. And that's all for me for now. I'm happy to take questions at the end and hand off to the next speaker.
Thank you, Ruth. Now I will pass over to Juan, who will also explain it from his company point of view.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me. So I'm the founder of Traity, and we measure people's reputation based on their social media footprint. So if you have seen that chapter from Black Mirror from a couple of weeks ago, that's pretty much what we do. In a sensible and ethical way, hopefully. And we recently partnered with, actually with 3 insurance companies. I'm going to mention our last partnership with DAS, which is part of the Ergo Group and part of the Munich Re Group. They provide legal protection or income protection for landlords in their tenancies. And what struck us was that most of the risk is with the tenant, but they do very little risk assessment around the tenant. They ask questions about the postcode of the property, about the landlord itself, but very little about the tenant. And what is important to note is that even though the risk on the asset at risk might be the house or the rent, the risk agent is the tenant. And so it made a lot of sense to work with them on a partnership whereby we measure people's or tenants' reputation to help them underwrite better or to provide more efficient landlord protection insurance. There are 2 ways in which we have approached this partnership. Firstly, we are kind of selling their product as a Traity product, and Traity provides that infrastructure of reputation, which means that we can effectively go to different demographics. So today they are mostly rejecting people who don't reach a certain level of income to rent ratio. And what Traity allows is to bring people in who might not hit those ratios. So, for example, students, immigrants, people who have not been in the country for long enough, etc. So that's kind of the first part. The second part, and that's what we are kind of planning for the next few months, is that as we prove that these correlations work and that our default rate is as good as measuring people's income, then the plan is to implement that with their own customers, with their own DAS product, which clearly has a lot more channel and distribution. So 2-sided kind of partnership. We announced this very recently, about a month ago, and I was just earlier this morning. I was with the CEO of DAS Spain. I think what is important to note about this partnership is that the sponsor were both the director of innovation and also the CEO. We have found that when C-level are involved early on in the conversation, and when that happens, the rest of the organization actually jumps on the wagon and really helps. And we obviously had to work with everyone around the organization, from legal, commercial, etc. But everyone jumps in the wagon once they see that there is enough momentum for that to happen. And we're seeing today even more support than when we started, now that the project is up and running.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all right? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Juan. So now I will pass over to Anastasia for her view from an incubator point of view.
Yeah.
Thanks for introduction and inviting me as a speaker to the session. Yes, my name is Anastasia and I'm a business development manager at Werk 1. So in the next 5 minutes, I would like just to give you a short overview over our new initiative called V1 for the IntroTech Accelerator. But before I do so, please, next slide. Yes, thank you. Maybe general overview, why do companies transform? I mean, the world is getting more and more complex. The consumer generation Y does want new products and more flexible and also service oriented, but also new competitors just came from like in the last 20, 30 years from the first digital revolution. They attacked classic business models and the need for changing and transformation of classic industries and companies is needed. So the collaboration. So maybe just a short overview. I used to work for the systems, and we had also different use cases where we had to work over different industries, but also with different players such as startups and corporates and technology companies in order to make complex products and solutions. So you all know that insurance companies is kind of behind this wave, but they realize that the transformation needs to happen now, and it also can happen only with new collaborations models and partnerships. So that is why we've got last year. We've got also demand from insurance companies who come from Bavaria in Germany, and they wanted to work with us, and they wanted to work with startups. So this was so-called Digitalisierungsinitiative, and one of the most crucial implementation points was that they wanted to start without an accelerator program. And this is how we came together with 10 biggest but also middle-sized companies from Bavaria, and the network of partners is expanding now. But just to give you an overview what we actually do as Werk 1. Werk 1 is a place we understand as ourselves as a place where ideas grow to digital entrepreneurship. So we are an incubator. We are hosting now 35 different startups from different fields, but we also offer co-working spaces and event space. So we actually a hotspot for new entrepreneurs and startups. And since April 2006, we started the new IntroTech Accelerator program, which is already running the successful first batch. And what is actually V1 Forward IntroTech Accelerator? And just skip the slide. So V1 for IntroTech Accelerator was launched with the leading insurance companies to establish one of the world's leading ecosystem for InsurTech startups in Munich and help them boost the market. So the program supports 5 teams, and it's open for every startups from all over the world who want to revolutionize the industry. So the teams are using Werk 1 installations. So we have a co-working space for free, and they work also hand in hand with renowned coaches, mentors, and leaders of the industries. And this is all worth of 80,000 euros for no equity. So the program is free for early stage startups, and we have 5 great finalists that we've got for the first batch. And what is the value of the program? That they're so diverse. It's not just a front end solution that they're offering, because there's so many now on the market brokers. But what insurance companies also need to understand the back end solutions and the technologies behind it. And that's why we have different portfolios of
of teams that are focused on big data, mobile claims, underwriting, and also improve the customer usability and channels. So I think the huge value of those programs is to have a diverse portfolio to let people understand what can we do with those technologies for use cases, how can we improve the insurance industry. And in my last slide, I would just give you a short overview. What do startups and corporates get from the program? So it's this for the startup is of course that within the 6 months of the program, they can develop and evaluate the business idea and validate it with the customers who are the biggest insurance companies. And by this, they also can minimize the risk. And during this time, they build long-term customer relationships. And those customers are also potential investors or partners. And this is what we see, how it's actually happening now in this program. And for the corporates, it's of course to understand what are those technologies and what are the new business models which are actually attracting more and more businesses. But also a huge value for corporates is to transform their culture and to be more open-minded, to be more agile and flexible, and also be ready to open themselves and to open their innovation processes and go for new cooperations and partnerships with also talents and specialists in this field. So there's the quote from Henry Ford that I really like, who says, "Coming together is beginning, keeping together is progress, but working together is success." So I think this is a quote that which shows for the future the need to stay and work together with different players. Thank you.
Great. Very interesting. Thank you, Anastasia, for this very interesting presentation. Here is your picture. So thank you for this page. Now we'll address the different questions. So let me remind you that if you haven't already done so, I encourage you to submit your questions via the blue Ask a Question box at the bottom of the screen. But there are a few coming. And so the first question will be for Ruth. And Ruth, in the frame of your presentation, you've mentioned different initiatives that Allianz is looking at, for instance, InsurTech in wealth management, specialist in cyber tech. You've mentioned digital health, connected property, etc. So my question is, how do you identify and prioritize these different initiatives, and if you use specific partnerships to do so, like, for instance, with Accelerator or any kind of other firms?
Yeah, so we do actually have, numerous different startup initiatives that we participate in formally and informally from my team and in Allianz generally. Allianz also has its own accelerator in Nice. We sponsor Startup Bootcamp, InsurTech in London. I personally mentor at a number of other places. I think that we function very much like institutional venture capital investors in the sense that we do define our own kind of investment thesis. Each of the members of the team who is responsible as a subject matter expert of a specific category, then spends a lot of time reading, doing research, participating in events, talking to people, sometimes working with consultants in order to obtain as much information as possible and to develop a point of view about the topics that we're responsible for. And that's how we define what we go after. And then, we pretty much take it from there, identifying interesting companies and then trying to build bridges between companies which interest us and Allianz.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. Actually, I have we've received another question for you, Ruth, but also for Anastasia. I read it. What filters are used to select firms for Werk 1 and for Allianz to invest in? Maybe Anastasia, you can start.
Oh, yeah, I can start actually. So yes, at the Werk 1 we have a selection process which is divided into 3 different categories or milestones. So at the beginning we have 10 most crucial criteria that are important to work within the Werk 1 facilities. So it means we have, for example, criteria such as it has to be a team of 2 or up to 5 members. It has to have a focus on the DACH market, which means also understanding a German market due to the different policies. So we have like 10 different criteria, and it has to be also an entrepreneur who's passionate and who's willing to work at Werk 1 facilities, because it means ready to move to Munich. And in the next step, we filter it, and we look to the different technologies, and there is a jury of entrepreneurs and who are having Skype calls with them and talking, so they have a guideline and talk to the teams to appreciate, are they open-minded to get ready to move to our facilities, but also to change themselves. Because, I mean, the value of the program is to get a coaching and mentorship and to validate the business model. But if teams are convinced that their business model is the right one, and there is no need to change, then we say, come on, what are you going to do in this program? Because it's actually an educational, entrepreneurial school for them. And those criteria are, very important. And at the end, the partners then decide which of the selected teams who are invited to the selection, they will be joining the program.
Thank you, Anastasia. Just to remind the question to Ruth, what filters are used to select firms for Allianz to invest in?
Yeah, so I think that anyone who's looking for investment, venture capital investment, usually needs to kind of understand what's the sweet spot of the investor that they're speaking to. We tend to invest in Series A, Series B companies, sized companies. So meaning that typically an investment that we make will be that the company will have a product in the market and have some first customers. There will be raising specific amounts of money, and they would have some connection to, a connection we could identify to our business. I would say nothing is written in stone, and investing tends to be opportunistic, but those are sort of the first. I would say the first criteria screen that I would do would be to look at, what is the company doing and how interesting is it to us? How much does it overlap with our ambitions at Allianz? And then if it's an investment opportunity, if it's the right kind of investment opportunity for us, and how much traction does the company have in its current state?
Okay. Another question, how do you take an idea from a small startup to a full commercial application? How do you evaluate that? So maybe also from both of you, Anastasia and Ruth. Maybe Ruth can start.
Yeah, sometimes I don't think that's our ambition necessarily. I think that there are lots of roles, as I said in my talk, that an incumbent can play in the life of a startup. So I think that looking at an incumbent to completely accelerate a business to scale is maybe unrealistic. It might be great to have an incumbent as a customer. It might be great to have a lot of input or help on one very specific aspect of the value chain. But I think ultimately successful companies tend to have a strong vision of how to get to scale independently, which will include, important customers or important partners, but probably isn't accelerated exclusively by an incumbent partnership.
Okay, thank you. Anastasia, anything to add to that?
Yes, it's also about the character of entrepreneurs. It should be a strong type of entrepreneurs who's willing to work, because it's sometimes frustrating to because every startup has different curves. Today is a great day, tomorrow is everything falling down because the partners are moving too slow, and customers as well, because of policies and different processes. So they need to be they have to be willing to stay strong and passionate. This is about characters, and also at the beginning, choose the right mentors and choose the right people. So it's all about the teamwork and stick together, and also have different features or different characters who will help you to scale the business.
Okay, thank you, Anastasia. We have a question for Juan. Actually, it's about the partnership they have with DAS, Ergo, and Munich Re. And the question is, as they deal with reputation data, they deal also with social network data. The question is, generally, insurance companies are very cautious about using this type of data. It's a very sensitive topic. How do you deal with in your firm in partnership with those types of companies when it comes to the cultural aspect? How it can affect the culture of the company using this type of data from those different data sources?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So first of all, we always look at data from a very proactive kind of approach. So when you think about it, today, the people who are taking advantage from your data are the Googles and Facebooks of this world, who are just showing you ads, and they do it in a passive way. You don't really tell them to show them to you. In the case of insurance or FinTech, credit, etc., what we're proposing is that you use your reputation to help you achieve things that matter to you. So it means that you could use your reputation to get access to that home. I'm doing here. There are people who don't fit inside the box that DAS accepts of, depending on which includes how long they have been working, what income ratio they have, as I said earlier, and a couple more things. But some people just don't fit that criteria, especially when we're considering new forms of employment, freelancers, Uber drivers, people who have several sources of income in the sharing economy, etc. That is changing, and we have to adapt to give people with non-traditional forms of employment access to the same financial services and financial products. Now, the approach that we have is mostly around giving people access to opportunities, and I think that's kind of the ethos that we run by, and that actually feels very natural and very positive for both society and for the company, from the PR perspective, or from the culture that you mentioned earlier. I think that what we're trying to do is to give people, a sense of value that they don't get from traditional forms of credit scoring, which is basically valuing their past, their past credit or their past working at the blue chip. But that's not really how the future of work is looking like, and we have to find new ways of measuring people such that anyone can access those financial services. I will give you a quick example. There are, when you think about emerging countries, which is a good way to think about things, because there is a lot less data about people. In a country like India, there are 200 million people who have bank accounts, but there are more than 600 million people with Facebook accounts. So if you can give those 400 million people in the middle access to financial services like homes. And when I say homes here, it's very clear. If the landlord cannot get approval from the insurance company to get landlord protection, the landlord will choose a different tenant. This is access to homes. Then it just leads to segregation. It leads to lack of access to opportunities. It leads to difficulty in access the job and the economic growth. And that's kind of the way we're thinking about it. In India itself, for example, the average deposit is about 7 to 9 months. So think about how that impacts people's ability to move. And even in the first world, like in Berlin, the average deposit is 3 months. I mean, if landlords don't trust their tenants, they require high deposits, and that limits people's ability to emancipate from their parents, to move, etc. So I think that new forms of data, if we make them proactive and we give people a control over what's happening and how they can benefit from it, is definitely the right way to approach that new form of unstructured data is going to be very powerful. We just have to be very careful about how to use it.
Thank you, Juan. So another question, and I think it's more for Anastasia, and maybe Ruth will be able also to bring her view on that. So what would be the profile of a mentor for these entrepreneurs from corporates?
So we have different types of entrepreneurs. So on the one side, we have entrepreneurs from like mentors from entrepreneurial side, who are actually experienced guys from different fields. So we have like different identify different topics like UX design or technology, UX codes, and marketing, social media, and so on and so on. So those guys are actually have normally their own startups running successfully and are specialized for years in this field. And on the other hand, we have also coaches that come from insurance industries. So these are also from different departments. So at the beginning, we define also topics that are important for startups to get insight into the insurance market, and those are actually experts from different departments. It can be from IT compliance or insurance product development department. So it depends also on what the startups also wish. So at the beginning, we have an overview of the insurance topics, and in the next phase, they define the topics they want to learn more and experts they need. That is why we have actually access to different departments over our central partners.
Thank you, Anastasia. Ruth, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess most of the companies that I see fall into one of two categories. One, experienced insurance people who see a problem with the industry that they think technology can solve and they go out to solve it. Or two, insurance customers or people who have done research about insurance, but who have a technology background. And I think depending on the profile of the entrepreneurs, they have different gaps that they need to fill, that they need mentors to fill. So a lot of the people who come from a technology background are really desperate to have insurance expertise on their board or, as mentors or as advisors to the company, because it just isn't, it's a very complex industry and it's great to have perspective. The people who come from the insurance, many of the people I know who come from the insurance world just feel kind of like, no, I've got this, no problem, but they might need, perspective on marketing or perspective on enterprise sales, or, building a software as a service company. So, I think that it's very specific to the gaps that the team needs filled, and I think that most teams understand what their gaps are.
Thank you, Ruth. Maybe a last question, and then I'll have to wrap up. So in the opinion of all of you, what are the next waves of technology we should be watching? Actually, maybe a good slide is the one I have shown in the beginning, where I show the different types of technologies that can be used to innovate in the insurance business model. But maybe very shortly, what's your view on this, Ruth, Anastasia, and Juan? So, what are the next waves in terms of technologies we should be watching?
Okay, I'll just start with it. Actually, all the technologies are quite interesting for insurance companies. It can be, IoT. It's actually the topic, which is also, blockchain. One of the important things that insurance has to be aware. But also, if you watch on the emerging technology cycle, there are so many technologies that should be watched. And I can't say those three are the most important. I think it depends on use cases and processes, of course, of the insurance companies. And this is what they need to define their strategy and their vision in the future. What are their prioritization for the insurance companies? Do they want to change, internal processes, or do more automatic analysis and so on and so on? And these are so many different technologies. So, but at the end, it's all about the data and how you actually, deal with the data smartly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Ruth. Anastasia, do you want to add something on that?
Oh, that was actually Anastasia speaking. This is Ruth.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. I think that Anastasia mentioned so many of the critical topics. Really, she mentioned data. She mentioned Internet of Things. I think blockchain, autonomous car. I think that there's something very interesting for me personally. I'm very interested in a lot of the technological developments where insurance really overlaps with some of the bigger questions for the world. And, vis-a-vis climate change, vis-a-vis, transportation problems. So I get really excited when I see a company that is looking to answer, some of the critical questions of our time. I think one thing which has been ignored because it's difficult to kind of sell it to insurance companies are the core insurance systems themselves. So it's kind of unsexy and less fun. But I can't believe that we're going to be able to make huge innovations using the systems that most companies have in place now. So that's one bet I might make.
Thank you. Juan, except social media data, anything to add to the types of technologies to watch?
Yeah, so one that I would add is the idea of the chatbots and the artificial intelligence. I think that insurance is still mostly sold by people, and that leads to big insurances. It leads to complexity in selling small or micro insurances. I think that the ability to sell very small insurances will only be possible by using self-purchasing processes. Like it could be chatbots, it could be just forms. But I think that chatbots are really going to help. I will also be thinking more than about technology at the areas that I think are going to be more fundamentally changing the economics behind insurances. I think it's going to be prevention, not prediction. I think that when we think about insurance, we often think in terms of we have to predict if this will have 8% risk or 7% risk. I think that the name of the game will be when we can make that 7 or 8% risk become 3% or 2%, just because we're building all the right prevention elements behind that risk, such that risk doesn't happen. And this obviously involves Internet of Things, but many other technologies that live in that direction.
Okay.
So that would be my biggest bet, is on prevention.
Thank you, Juan. And so that's all the time we have, I'm afraid. So, but I'm glad to say that you can hear more from Juan and Ruth at the InsurTech Rising in November. in particular during the Spotlight on Strategic Partnership session on the 16th of November, when insurance companies and InsurTechs will be presenting on their collaboration. Thank you everyone for coming along. Make sure to keep your eye on your email inbox for information about future webinars and the upcoming InsurTech Rising events. And thank you to Ruth, Juan, and Anastasia for joining us this morning for this discussion. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you.